The candle flickered alone on the chocolate cake as Billionaire. Margaret Whitfield sat in the corner booth of Mama Rose's diner. Her hands shook as she stared at the single flame dancing in the dim light. The young woman with the perfect bob cut blonde hair and piercing blue eyes looked nothing like someone who should be eating alone on her 30th birthday. Not one person had called today. Not one card had arrived at her massive mansion. The empty chair across from her seemed to mock every lonely moment of her wealthy but hollow life. Then suddenly a gentle hand touched her shoulder. The beautiful Nigerian-American waitress named Destiny leaned down close to her ear. Her long black curly hair cascaded around her face as she whispered urgently, "Keep eating and act normal. Do not look at the table next to you. Your life depends on it." Margaret's blue eyes widened in fear as her fork froze halfway to her mouth. What could possibly be happening in this quiet little diner that would put her life in danger? Margaret Whitfield had built her empire from nothing by age 30. At just 18, she had inherited a small tech startup from her deceased parents and turned it into Whitfield Industries worth $3 billion. Her sharp blue eyes had seen countless boardroom battles, and her blonde bob had become famous in business magazines. She owned tech companies and real estate across the country. But success had cost her everything that mattered. She had never married because every man seemed to want her money more than her heart. Her college friends had all drifted away when she became too successful and too busy for normal relationships. She had tried dating, but every relationship ended the same way, with men either intimidated by her wealth or trying to use her for it. She had employees who respected her and business partners who feared her, but she had no real friends. She had penthouses in 3 cities, but no place that felt like home. She had enough money to buy anything she wanted, but she couldn't buy love or friendship or family. That's why she found herself eating birthday dinner alone in a simple diner instead of some fancy restaurant. She wanted to feel normal for once in her life. She wanted to be around real people who didn't know who she was or how much money she had. Destiny Johnson was 23 years old with the most beautiful face anyone had ever seen. Her long black curly hair flowed down her back like a waterfall, and her warm brown eyes sparkled with kindness. She had come to America from Nigeria with her grandmother when she was just 5 years old. They had arrived with nothing but hope and faith in God. Destiny was working 3 jobs to support her sick grandmother and pay for nursing school. During the day, she worked at a doctor's office as a receptionist. At night, she waited tables at Mama Rose's diner. On weekends, she cleaned offices downtown. She had been waiting tables at Mama Rose's for 2 years, and she loved taking care of people. Her grandmother had taught her that serving others was the highest calling in life. She noticed everything about her customers because she truly cared about people. When the elegant young white woman with the perfect blonde hair had walked in, asking for a table for one, Destiny could tell this lady was hurting inside, despite her expensive clothes and jewelry. Destiny had seen the small birthday cake the woman had brought from the bakery next door. It broke her heart that someone so young and beautiful was spending their birthday completely alone. She could see the sadness behind those blue eyes, even though the woman tried to hide it. But when Destiny saw the 3 dangerous-looking men at the corner table watching the blonde woman and whispering, she knew something was very wrong. The 3 men had been sitting there for 2 hours nursing the same cups of coffee and staring at their phones. They were clearly not there to eat. Destiny noticed they kept taking pictures of the blonde woman with their phones when she wasn't looking. She heard one of them say, "That's definitely Margaret Whitfield, the tech billionaire." And another one said, "She's worth $3 billion. This could be the biggest score we've ever had." The 3rd man had his hand inside his jacket touching something that looked like a weapon. "We wait until she leaves, then we follow her to the parking lot. Rich girls like that always carry cash and jewelry." Destiny's heart pounded with fear as she realized they were planning something terrible. She recognized these men from the news reports she had seen on television. They were part of a gang that had been robbing wealthy people after following them from restaurants and hotels. 3 people had been killed in the last month during these robberies. The police had been warning people to be careful, but this young woman had no idea she was being watched. Destiny knew she had to do something to save this lonely woman's life. But she also knew that if these men realized she was listening to their plans, they might hurt her too. She said a quick prayer, asking God to give her wisdom and courage to handle this dangerous situation. "My name is Destiny, and I'll be taking care of you tonight," she said gently as she approached Margaret's table with a warm smile that lit up her beautiful face. Margaret looked up with tired blue eyes that held years of pain and loneliness. Despite being only 30 years old, she looked like someone who had carried the weight of the world on her shoulders. "Thank you, dear. It's my birthday today, and I just wanted someplace quiet to think," she said in a soft voice that made Destiny's heart ache. She could hear the sadness and emptiness in this young woman's words. "Well, happy birthday, ma'am. That's a beautiful cake you have there. Did you pick it out yourself?" Destiny asked, trying to keep the conversation light, while her mind raced with worry about the dangerous men watching from across the room. Margaret managed a small smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I did. I know it sounds silly, but I've never actually bought myself a birthday cake before. I always had assistants do things like that. But today I wanted to do something normal." The vulnerability in her voice made Destiny want to cry. Here was one of the richest women in America, and she had never even bought herself a birthday cake. "Would you like me to light the candle for you? Everyone deserves to make a birthday wish." When Margaret nodded with tears forming in her blue eyes, Destiny lit the candle with shaking hands. She was trying to figure out how to warn this woman without causing panic in the restaurant. The 3 dangerous men were still watching and waiting like predators stalking their prey. As Margaret ate her simple meal of meatloaf and mashed potatoes, Destiny kept finding excuses to check on her table. She refilled her water glass 3 times and brought extra napkins she didn't need. Each time she passed by the 3 men, they stared at her with cold, threatening eyes that made her skin crawl. She could tell they were getting suspicious of her. Frequent trips to Margaret's table. One of them grabbed her arm roughly as she walked by carrying a tray of food for another customer. "Hey, beautiful girl with the pretty hair," he said with an evil smile that made her stomach turn. "Why don't you mind your own business and stop bothering that rich lady so much? Or you might get hurt too." His grip on her arm was so tight it left bruises, but Destiny didn't let the fear show on her face. "I'm just doing my job, sir. Is there something I can get for you?" she said politely, while her heart pounded in her chest. He stared at her beautiful face for a long moment before letting go of her arm. "Just remember what I said, little girl. Some things are none of your business." Destiny's hands trembled as she served other customers, but she refused to abandon the birthday woman to these evil men. She noticed the woman's purse was an expensive designer bag, and her jewelry sparkled with real diamonds and emeralds. These men had definitely targeted her because she looked wealthy, and they thought she would be an easy victim. But they had no idea that this scared, lonely woman was about to find a guardian angel in a beautiful Nigerian-American waitress who refused to let evil win. When Margaret finished her meal and asked for the check, Destiny knew time was running out. The 3 men were already putting money on their table and getting ready to leave. She could see them checking their weapons and phones. They were preparing to follow Margaret out to the dark parking lot where no one would see what happened to her. Destiny's mind raced as she brought the check over to Margaret's table. She had tried calling the police from the kitchen phone, but the line was busy. She had asked her manager Jose to call them, but he was in the back office doing inventory and hadn't heard her knocking. She was running out of options, and this beautiful young woman's life was in her hands. That's when she made the decision that would change both of their lives forever. She leaned down close to Margaret's ear, letting her long curly hair hide her face from the watching men. "Keep eating and act normal. Do not look at the table next to you. Your life depends on it," she whispered with urgent fear in her voice. She watched as Margaret's perfect face went pale with terror, and her blue eyes widened in shock. "What do you mean my life depends on it?" Margaret whispered back so quietly that only Destiny could hear her. Her hands were shaking as she held her fork. "There are 3 men over there who have been watching you all night. I heard them planning to rob you in the parking lot. I think they have weapons. They know who you are and how much money you have. Please don't look at them, or they'll know I warned you." Margaret's heart began pounding so hard she thought it might explode as the terrible reality hit her. She was about to become another victim of violent crime. All her money and success meant nothing if she was going to die in a parking lot on her 30th birthday. But this beautiful young Nigerian-American waitress with the kind eyes and gentle smile was risking her own safety to protect a complete stranger. Margaret had spent years surrounded by people who only cared about her money, but here was someone who cared about her life just because she was a human being. "What should I do?" she asked quietly while trying to keep her face calm even though she was terrified inside. Destiny thought quickly while pretending to write something on her notepad in case the men were watching. "I'm going to try calling the police again, but it might take them a few minutes to get here. You need to stay in this booth and pretend everything is normal. Keep eating your cake slowly. When I give you a signal, you run straight through that door to the kitchen and lock yourself in the walk-in freezer. There's a phone in there and you can call for help. Whatever happens, don't try to go to your car. That's where they're planning to hurt you." Margaret couldn't believe this brave young woman was willing to put herself in danger for someone she had just met. She looked into Destiny's warm brown eyes and saw something she hadn't seen in years. She saw genuine care and concern from another human being who wanted nothing from her except to keep her safe. "Why are you helping me?" she whispered with tears starting to form in her blue eyes. "You don't even know me. I could be a terrible person." Destiny smiled that beautiful smile that seemed to light up the whole restaurant. "Because my grandmother taught me that we're all God's children. And God's children look after each other, especially when they're in trouble. Besides, you don't look terrible to me. You just look lonely and scared. And nobody should have to be either one of those things on their birthday." The next few minutes felt like hours as they waited for help to arrive. Margaret tried to eat her cake with steady hands while watching Destiny work. The young waitress moved through the diner like nothing was wrong, but Margaret could see the fear in her beautiful brown eyes. She could also see incredible courage and determination. Destiny kept glancing toward the kitchen, hoping to see police officers, but none came. She realized she was going to have to handle this situation herself to protect Margaret. The 3 men were getting impatient, and one of them stood up and started walking toward the restroom, which was right next to Margaret's booth. Destiny saw what was happening and quickly intercepted him. "Excuse me, sir, but our restroom is out of order right now. There's a gas station next door if you need to use their facilities," she said with a sweet smile, even though her heart was racing with fear. The man looked down at her beautiful face with an ugly expression. "Listen here, pretty girl. I know you've been watching us and talking to that rich blonde. You better keep your mouth shut or we're going to have problems." He stepped closer to her, and she could smell alcohol on his breath. "I don't know what you're talking about, sir. I'm just trying to do my job and serve my customers," she said bravely, even though she wanted to run. "That's right. And your job is to mind your own business. That woman is going to come with us when she leaves here, and there's nothing you can do about it, so just stay out of our way." Destiny felt sick to her stomach hearing him talk about hurting Margaret, but she didn't back down. "I think you should leave now, sir. You're making other customers uncomfortable." The man laughed a cold, evil laugh that made her skin crawl. "We'll leave when we're ready, little girl. And we're taking the birthday girl with us. Just then she heard sirens in the distance and her heart jumped with hope. She had managed to get a text message to her friend Rosa, who worked at the police station. Help was finally coming. When the police finally arrived through the back entrance, Destiny gave Margaret a small nod and whispered, "It's okay now. You're safe." 4 police officers quickly surrounded the 3 criminals who tried to run but were caught before they reached the door. "Police freeze. Put your hands where we can see them," shouted the lead officer. The 3 men tried to act innocent, but when the officers searched them, they found a loaded gun and a knife. They also found photos of Margaret on their phones along with information about her car and where she lived. "We got a tip that you were planning to rob and possibly harm this woman," said Detective Martinez as he handcuffed the leader of the group. "That's a lie," the man said angrily. "We were just having coffee." But Destiny stepped forward bravely and told the officers everything she had heard them planning. Her testimony along with the weapons and photos was enough evidence to arrest all 3 men. Margaret watched in amazement as this beautiful young woman who barely knew her stood up to dangerous criminals to keep her safe. When the police asked Destiny why she had gotten involved, she simply said, "Because it was the right thing to do. Nobody deserves to be hurt, especially not on their birthday." Margaret realized this young woman had literally saved her life and asked for nothing in return. She had risked her own safety for a complete stranger, just because she believed in doing what was right. After the police took their statements and arrested the 3 men, Margaret sat alone with Destiny in the empty diner. The other customers had all left after the excitement, and it was just the 2 of them sitting across from each other in the booth. Margaret looked at this incredible young woman with her long, beautiful curly hair and kind brown eyes and felt tears filling her own blue eyes. "You saved my life tonight, Destiny. You don't even know me, but you risked everything to protect me. Why would you do that for a stranger?" Destiny smiled gently and reached across the table to take Margaret's, shaking hands in her own warm ones. "Because everyone deserves to be safe, ma'am. And because you looked so sad sitting here alone on your birthday. My grandmother always told me that God puts people in our path for a reason. Maybe I was supposed to be here tonight to help you. Maybe you were supposed to be here tonight to remind me why I want to become a nurse. Either way, I'm glad we met." Margaret felt something break open in her heart that had been closed for so many years. "What's your full name, sweet girl?" "Destiny Johnson, ma'am. My grandmother brought me here from Nigeria when I was little after my parents died in a car accident. She raised me to believe that helping others is the most important thing we can do in life." Margaret squeezed Destiny's hands and felt warmth spreading through her chest. "Well, Destiny Johnson, you are truly an angel sent from heaven. I haven't felt this grateful to be alive in a very long time. You didn't just save my life tonight. You reminded me why life is worth living." As they talked through the night, Margaret learned about Destiny's dreams of becoming a nurse and her struggles to pay for school while caring for her sick grandmother who had diabetes and heart problems. She learned about the long hours working 3 different jobs and the tiny 1-bedroom apartment they shared, where Destiny slept on the couch so her grandmother could have the bed. She learned about getting up at 5 in the morning to help her grandmother with her medications before going to work at the doctor's office. She learned about studying for her nursing classes late at night after working at the diner until closing time. But she also heard about Destiny's incredible faith in God and her belief that helping others was the most important thing in life. She heard about the joy Destiny felt when she could make a patient smile at the doctor's office, or when she could brighten someone's day at the restaurant. Margaret found herself opening up about her own loneliness and regrets in a way she had never done with anyone before. She told Destiny about losing her parents in a plane crash when she was just 18 and having to run their company all by herself. She talked about the pressure of being responsible for thousands of employees and billions of dollars before she was even old enough to drink legally. She shared her fears about never finding real love because everyone seemed to want her money. more than her heart. "I have 3 houses and 4 cars," she said with tears in her blue eyes. "I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. But I don't have what you have, Destiny. I don't have love and purpose and the courage to help others. I don't have anyone who cares if I live or die. If those men had killed me tonight, it might have been days before anyone even noticed I was missing." When it was time to leave, Margaret stood up and hugged Destiny tightly, feeling like she was hugging the sister she had never had. "You gave me the greatest birthday gift anyone could ever give. You gave me my life. But more than that, you showed me what real goodness looks like. You showed me that there are still people in this world who care about others just because it's the right thing to do." She pulled out her checkbook from her expensive purse and wrote a check that made Destiny gasp and nearly fall over when she saw the amount. It was for $200,000. "This is for your nursing school and your grandmother's medical bills and anything else you need. But I want to give you something else too that means even more to me. I want to offer you a job at my company. Not as a waitress, but as my personal assistant while you finish school. You'll make $60,000 a year plus full medical benefits for you and your grandmother. You can work flexible hours around your classes, and I'll even pay for a tutor if you need help with your studies." Destiny stared at the check with tears streaming down her beautiful face and her hands shaking with emotion. The amount was more money than she had ever dreamed of having. It was enough to pay for everything she needed and still have money left over to help other people in need. But the job offer meant even more, because it meant Margaret believed in her and saw her potential. "Ma'am, I don't know what to say. This is like a miracle straight from God. My grandmother always says that. God provides for those who help others, and I guess she was right. But I can't take all this money without doing something to earn it." Margaret smiled the first real smile she had smiled in years, and it transformed her whole face. "You're the miracle, Destiny. You reminded me that life isn't about what we have, but about what we give. You showed me that real wealth comes from caring about others. And you already earned this by saving my life and showing me what true friendship looks like." Destiny stared at the check with tears streaming down her face and her whole body shaking with emotion. It was enough money to pay for everything she needed and more. But the job offer meant even more because it meant Margaret believed in her and saw her worth as a person. "Ma'am, I don't know what to say. This is like a miracle straight from heaven. My grandmother is going to cry tears of joy when I tell her. She's been so worried about how we're going to pay for her heart surgery next month. This changes everything for us." Margaret felt her own eyes filling with tears as she saw the pure joy and gratitude on Destiny's beautiful face. "You're the miracle, Destiny. You reminded me that life isn't about what we have, but about what we give. You showed me that real wealth comes from caring about others. Please say you'll take the job. I need someone like you in my life. I need to learn how to be the kind of person you are." They hugged again, and both women felt something beautiful and life-changing beginning in their hearts. Margaret had found the sister and friend she had always needed, and Destiny had found a way to help her grandmother and finish school while doing meaningful work. But more than that, they had found each other at exactly the moment when they both needed someone to care about them. 2 years later, Margaret stood in the graduation ceremony watching Destiny walk across the stage to receive her nursing degree with highest honors. Her long curly hair flowed behind her as she walked, and her beautiful face glowed with joy and accomplishment. Sitting beside Margaret was Destiny's proud grandmother, who was now healthy again after her successful heart surgery that Margaret had paid for at the best hospital in the country. Also, there were several other young people that Margaret and Destiny had helped through their new scholarship program for students from immigrant families who wanted to become nurses and doctors. The 3 criminals who had planned to hurt Margaret were now serving 20-year prison sentences, but their evil plan had actually brought about something wonderful and life-changing. Margaret had found the sister of her heart in Destiny, and Destiny had found the family she had always dreamed of having. Margaret's company now ran a foundation that helped young people from all backgrounds pay for college and medical school. She had also started dating a wonderful man named Dr. James Miller, who worked at the hospital where Destiny was doing her training. He was a kind-hearted doctor who ran a free clinic for poor families. He loved Margaret for who she was, not what she had, and he respected her generous heart and her desire to help others. He had proposed to her just last month, and she had said yes with tears of happiness in her blue eyes. And every year on Margaret's birthday they returned to Mama Rosa's diner to celebrate not just another year of life, but the night that changed everything. The lonely billionaire had discovered that the greatest fortune of all was the family you choose to love and the people who choose to love you back. Destiny had whispered a warning that saved Margaret's life, but in return, Margaret had found a reason to truly live. They had both learned that sometimes the most beautiful friendships begin with a simple act of kindness from one stranger to another. And sometimes all it takes is one person who cares enough to whisper, "Your life depends on it," to change two lives forever. Margaret sat in her mansion weeks later, staring out the window at the city lights, but her thoughts were not on her billions. They were on the young woman who had saved her life that night in Mama Rosa's diner. She kept replaying the moment Destiny had leaned close, whispering those urgent words that changed everything, and she knew deep down her life would never be the same because money had never been able to fill the emptiness in her heart. But Destiny's courage had lit a fire inside her soul and given her a reason to live beyond numbers and profit. Margaret began visiting Destiny and her grandmother, often bringing groceries, paying for medicines, and sometimes just sitting at their small kitchen table, eating rice and beans, and laughing like she had not laughed in years. For the first time in her life, Margaret felt like part of a family, and she realized that love did not come from blood or business deals, but from kindness and trust and shared hope. When she watched Destiny walk across her small apartment each morning, juggling textbooks, a lunch bag, and her grandmother's medicine, Margaret saw more strength in her than in all the corporate giants she had battled in boardrooms, and she decided she wanted to pour her wealth into something that mattered, something that would make Destiny's dream of becoming a nurse come true, and also help countless others who were fighting the same battles with poverty, loneliness, and fear. So she created a foundation in Destiny's name called the Johnson Hope Fund, and its mission was to help children of immigrants, students with no support, and families with sick loved ones. It grew faster than she imagined, because when people heard the story of a young waitress saving a billionaire's life, they opened their wallets and their hearts to join the mission. Soon scholarships were being handed out to dozens of young people who thought they would never see college, and patients were getting free treatment in clinics that bore the Johnson Hope Fund name. Margaret attended every event, not as the cold billionaire in magazine covers, but as a woman reborn by friendship and gratitude. She often stood on stage telling the story of a waitress who whispered a warning that saved her life and ended up saving her soul too. Every time she told it, she pointed at Destiny in the front row and said, "She is the true hero, not me," and the crowds would stand and cheer, and tears would roll down Destiny's cheeks. As her grandmother clapped with pride, years passed, and Margaret's heart softened more with every moment spent with her new family. She learned to cook jollof rice with Destiny's grandmother. She helped decorate their Christmas tree in that tiny apartment. She learned to pray again after years of silence because she felt God's presence in the love that tied them together. And one day, she met a kind doctor named James Miller who worked at the clinic Margaret had funded. He was not impressed by her money, but by her compassion, and he fell in love with her gentle heart that Destiny had helped uncover. He held her hand not because she was wealthy, but because she was human. And when he proposed to her in the same diner where her life had been saved, she said yes through tears of joy. Destiny stood beside her that night, as maid of honor, glowing with pride, because she knew God had written the story with purpose and timing. Margaret built a new home, not a mansion of glass and steel, but a warm house filled with laughter, friends, and the smell of food cooked with love. And in that home, Destiny and her grandmother were always welcome like family, because they were family not by blood, but by choice. And every year on Margaret's birthday, they gathered at Mama Rose's diner with a small chocolate cake and one candle, and they told the story all over again to remind themselves and everyone listening that one whisper of courage can change two lives forever. Destiny finished nursing school with honors and became a nurse known not just for her skill, but for her compassion. She held the hands of dying patients, prayed with scared families, and gave hope to people who felt forgotten. And every time she bent down to whisper encouragement in someone's ear, she remembered the night she whispered in Margaret's ear, and how that moment had turned fear into faith and loneliness into love. Margaret, on the other hand, transformed Whitfield Industries into more than a tech empire. She turned it into a company that cared, building schools in poor neighborhoods, hospitals in rural towns, and funding programs that lifted women out of poverty. She no longer wanted to be remembered for her billions, but for her giving, and she always said Destiny taught her that true wealth is measured in lives touched, not money counted. When people asked why she trusted Destiny so much, she smiled and said, "Because she saved me when I was most lost, not just from danger, but from myself. She gave me back my humanity." Together, Margaret and Destiny became a team, a pair of sisters bound by fate, one with wealth and the other with wisdom, using their gifts to change the world. They spoke at universities, telling young people to never underestimate the power of kindness. They visited prisons, reminding inmates that redemption was possible. They walked through hospitals, holding hands with sick children, giving them hope. And they sat beside lonely old people, listening to stories that no one else wanted to hear. Everywhere they went, they spread light and healing. Margaret often thought back to that lonely night when the candle flickered on her cake, and she felt like the richest woman in the world, yet the poorest in her heart. She realized now that God had sent an angel in the form of a Nigerian-American waitress named Destiny Johnson, and that angel had rewritten her story forever. Years later, when Margaret and Destiny sat on the porch of their home watching the sun set, with Destiny's grandmother knitting beside them and James bringing out tea, Margaret whispered, "Thank you for saving me that night." Destiny smiled and shook her head. "No, Margaret, you saved me too, because before you I was drowning in work and worry, with no hope that life could be bigger than struggle. But you showed me that dreams can come true, and together we saved each other." Margaret's eyes filled with tears as she hugged her like a sister, and in that embrace, they both knew the truth that money, power, and fame fade away, but love, courage, and friendship last forever. The candle that once flickered alone in a dark diner had now become a blazing fire, lighting the way for thousands, and it all began with a whisper: "Keep eating and do not look." And in that whisper, a billionaire found life again, and a waitress found wings, and the world found a story of hope that would be told for generations to come.